A, the Iranians have the technological capability to enrich. B, their technical capability combined, their poor technical capability combined with the serious safeguarding measures that have been implemented come together to make it impossible for Iran to pursue a covert nuclear weapons program. Iran would have to kick the inspectors out and then pray for some sort of miraculous technological breakthrough that allowed them to achieve the level of enrichment necessary to have, highly enriched uranium capable for use in a weapon. All this would take time and give the world not only the opportunity but the motive to respond. So this is no longer about Iran's nuclear program. I keep telling people, I get called up all the time, what can we do? How should we move forward? And I say, look, anybody in Washington, D.C., any think tank, any arms control wonk type group that continues to articulate in favor of the suspension of Iran's nuclear enrichment program as, the way to resolve this issue is missing the point. It's no longer about that. It's about regime change, and what we need to do is be focusing on, issues that deal with the reality of American-Iranian relations. It's not about the nuclear program. We've got that one solved. That is solved. The IAEA has solved this. There is no nuclear weapons program in Iran. Their nuclear program is safeguarded. It constitutes a threat to no one. To continue down the path of having dialogue with Iran for the purpose of achieving the suspension of a program Iran will never suspend only reinforces the spacious arguments put forward by the Bush administration, Israel, etc. It's time we start focusing on other issues. And, Iran has given the world an opening. I don't know if people are smart enough to pick up on it, but, Iran's recent testing of its missiles has created the conditions where, people can talk about a freeze of missile testing, perhaps a INF treaty, Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty type configuration for the Middle East, in which Iran will give up its Shahid-3 missile in conjunction with verified arms inspections of not just Iran but Israel and others. What this does is it eliminates the one means of delivery of a nuclear weapon the world is worried about. And if you eliminate the Shahid-3 missile, now all that other talk about an Iranian nuclear program is gone. And then, this would suddenly create turmoil in Europe, where Russia would come in and say, wait a minute, if Iran's getting rid of its missile, there's no need for this anti-ballistic missile program. I mean, it's this kind of creative thinking that people should be thinking about, as opposed to this continuous pounding away at a suspension of uranium enrichment, which is an absolutely pointless direction to head in, because it's not connected to reality. Iran is going to enrich uranium for a nuclear energy program. This program is under safeguards. It constitutes a threat to no one. And for the world of diplomacy and nonproliferation to allow itself to be trapped in that mode of thinking that suspension is the answer only facilitates the likelihood of conflict. We need to start thinking outside the box, expanding, our venues for resolving this problem. And again, Iran has created the conditions with its missile testing that have created some windows of opportunity. Let's see if people are smart enough and brave enough to exploit it.
All right. Now, one of the reasons I'm really glad I have you on the show today, Scott, is because I want to ask you about some of these details about the smoking laptop and the accusations contained therein, because even though the IAEA continues to verify the non-diversion of nuclear materials to any military or other special purpose, quote unquote, they also keep saying, well, there's still some unresolved questions here and unresolved questions there. So I'm hoping that I can get the full explanation from you as best as you can possibly tell me about the smoking laptop. But I'll start with what I think I understand about it, and that is that the NCRI, the political front for the Mujahideen-e-Khalq, are the ones who came up with this laptop, and that contained therein are at least two accusations. If there are more, I'd love to hear them. The first is the idea that they had planned to build a laser enrichment facility to create what's called green salt, uranium tetrafluoride. and that doesn't make any sense because they make uranium hexafluoride down the street at their IAEA safeguarded facility and by the barrelful, and that's what you need to put in your centrifuges anyway. And so that accusation makes no sense, and the building was never even built. The other accusation is that there are plans on there for a delivery vehicle for an atomic warhead, although even David Albright has said in letters to the New York Times, has angrily pointed out that you couldn't fit a nuclear bomb in the delivery vehicle that they describe anyway. So that's basically all I know about the smoking laptop, and I would like, I guess, hopefully for you to fill in any missing accusations, any details about where this thing came from in the first place that you can tell us, and also whether the Iranians have fessed up and honestly answered these so-called outstanding questions.
First of all, we need to acknowledge that I'm not, I'm not a key and relevant player in this problem set. I'm not an inspector. I don't work with the Iranians, so I'm like interested observer on the outside, and so I need to say that any comments I make are based upon very limited information and is informed, not based upon a certainty of knowledge. Having said that, what I will say this about laptop computers, having done this before. We have the means, we being the United States of America, to forensically examine a laptop computer to build a history of that computer, of when it was turned on, when it was turned off, when data was inputted, when programs were loaded. Anytime that anything happened in that computer, we are able to extract that information. We can build a very detailed chronological picture. And this is done all the time in criminal and intelligence work to investigate computer usage. So here we have a computer that's alleged to contain all this important information. The first thing that should be done in order to help sell this to the world, especially now that we know that it's a computer of questionable provenance. I mean, coming from an opposition group that has a history of inaccurate reporting regarding Iran's activities and a history of its accurate reporting being prompted by intelligence services openly hostile to Iran, for instance, Israel and its Mossad. So why would we trust the MEK, the Mujahideen al-Haq? Haven't we been burned once by trusting an opposition group? Don't we remember the Iraqi National Congress and Ahmed Chalabi? So here we have a laptop. One would think that we would run these forensic checks on it and say, look, I know this came from a questionable source, but, even the worst criminal can become a confidential informant to help put bad person behind bars. So, yeah, we're not saying the MEK is great. We're not saying what's happened here is wonderful, but, in this case, they've given us something good. Look, let's look at how this computer was created, when it was turned on, who accessed it, how this information was logged in. It makes chronological sense. Everything here is conducive to saying, yeah, this data should be paid attention to, as opposed to simply fronting the data in a very curious manner. Opening up a computer in a room and telling people they can look at the computer, printing out the files and giving them to people as opposed to giving them access directly to the computer. This computer stinks from day one, and that's what people need to understand. It doesn't pass the smell test. Not only the analysis of the data it contains, but the computer itself, just how this is being handled, is not being handled correctly. If this was a court and a prosecutor was trying to make a case based upon this computer, it would be thrown out immediately because the prosecutor has done nothing to establish the viability, the credibility of this computer and the data contained within it. And the prosecutor in this case is the United States of America making charges against Iran. This computer's got to go. It's not a good computer. And anybody who continues to promote the data contained in this computer only demonstrates their lack of understanding of the rules of evidence. When we're going to talk about going after Iran on the issue of its nuclear program, we're talking about the rule of law. We're accusing Iran of violating its treaty obligations under the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty. Due process and the rule of law is a two-way street. If we're going to tell Iran that they're in violation of a treaty, then we ourselves have to abide by certain processes in presenting this data. When you enter into a treaty relationship, you're talking about a legal relationship.